Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me today, whether you are watching live or you're watching the recording. I appreciate you watching. Thank you for watching the live class today. I have the wrong background on here. Let's change that background really quickly. There we go. This is Web 140, Web Development Tools. And so our first module here is the HTML and CSS Bootcamp. And if you're in some of the other courses, what we're going to kind of talk about today is going to be a little redundant, right? Because it's basically the same module in all three courses. The idea is that you get practice, right? Because the more practice you get doing this stuff, the better you get at it. Right, so the more opportunities you have to practice and the more times you have to make things and do all this stuff with web development, the better you get and the more you remember, right? Because it's been a long time since the last time we talked about standard HTML and CSS. And so it's good to refresh our memories and get some practice while we're getting started. And so that's what this HTML and CSS Bootcamp module is all about. And so if you're in the Web 215 class and you saw that live class from this past Friday, a lot of what we're going to be doing today is going to be similar, if not the same, right? I might throw in a few little different things here and there just based on different things that you might need. And I will go ahead and show you Git and GitHub, even though we won't be learning that yet, and you won't have to submit that way. I just want to show you some things with the environment while we're working in it. So when we start to talk about Git and GitHub next week, you'll already have a slight introduction to it, which is going to be kind of fun, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to kind of work through and discuss my environment and how I work within my environment to build basic HTML and CSS web pages. I'm going to try to stick to the things that we learned in Web 115. So we're not expanding into a bunch of new stuff quite yet. But as we progress further, we'll be introducing new things into the repertoire, in this class and in other classes. However, that is going to make it a little bit challenging because, I'm not really used to writing HTML and CSS the way that we write it in our very introductory course where we are first learning that. You kind of learn the rules and you learn how things work. And then you learn different ways that you can kind of adapt and make different things. I'm not going to say break the rules because it's technically still within the rules, but one of the things that we've said about programming in general is that there's, at least a dozen different ways to do the same thing. And, as we're doing the same thing, sometimes there are different ways, better ways, worse ways of doing the same thing. So our goal is to look at what makes the most sense for us and to give ourselves some efficiencies. And so in my environment in particular, I use Visual Studio Code, which is the software I have pulled up here. I'm on the website for Visual Studio Code, code.visualstudio.com. We can see it's up here at the top, code.visualstudio.com. And once you go to this page, you should have a big download button here. It should download for whatever operating system that you have. Gives you the exact same sort of software. You'll also notice there's a little web link here. So if you have a Chromebook, you can technically use it. I don't recommend using the browser version in general, although, if you're traveling or something and you need to write some code, like this is basically the exact same thing. It's just in a browser, so it can be a little wonky sometimes. But in general, it's the exact same thing that you can do with any other version. So you'd want to basically download and install on your Windows, Mac, or Linux computer. Just standard installation, the way you'd install anything else. And once you do that, you'll have your Visual Studio Code window installed. It'll look like this, or it'll look very, very similar. And so I can create an environment on my machine using, all the GUIs and everything that's in my, in my operating system, right? Like, so for example, if I go into my hard drive here, I have a Web 140 folder. And you can see I have some demos here that I've done in previous years. There's fall 2022 and some various things here. And so we'll make one for this course, but I'll actually do that using the terminal. I like to use the terminal from within here. Like you can use the GUIs and go to open folder and, navigate and find the folder on your machine. But I like to use the terminal because it's a little bit quicker for me just because I'm used to it. You can kind of do what you are most comfortable with there. Another thing before I get into it is to look at the extensions that are in Visual Studio Code. If you'll look here on the left-hand side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down is the extensions icon. If I click that, that will open my extensions window, and you can see that I have a decent number of extensions installed. Visual Studio Code is great for all types of code, not just HTML and CSS. So I have things like the React Native tools. I have R and Python and various other things. There is one extension that I do recommend for you all, and that is this one right here. Live server from Ritwick Day, Ritwyck, last name Dey. This is a really great extension to create a live lamp stack development environment. If you search in the marketplace, Ritwick Day, you'll find it in there. It'll come up under his name, which is really nice. If you just look for live server, you'll find some imitators, right, that have basically done the same thing. They just maybe did it more recently, or, did something slightly different, right? Like you see some of the same people using the same sort of icon here. But if we look at this, it's had, 38 million downloads, which, I feel like I can trust something that has 38 million downloads. It also tells, right here's where you would install it. Gives you a lot of good information about it and how to use it. It is a really good extension, and I recommend you all get that extension. So let's go into my terminal now, and I'm going to just use some terminal commands, some command prompt commands to do some of the standard stuff that we would normally do. It's basically the same thing that we would do if we were doing it in the GUI. Let's just do it. I like doing it in the terminal because it's just slightly faster for me. I don't have to go to another window and go searching around. I can just use my terminal prompt here. So I want to change directory to my E directory, which is my project hard drive. And I want to create a new folder. So let's make a directory, mkdir, and let's call it web140 Fa23. Right, and so it wasn't there before, but now if we look in my project directory, it's here at the bottom because I left this window open. You see, here it is. We just made it through the terminal. So it's still showing that I am currently in the E drive here, so I would want to cd or change directory into web140 Fa23. And so from there, I can actually use the command code, C-O-D-E, and then period. And that will open a new Visual Studio Code window with that folder currently opened in it. Like so. Yes, I trust the authors because I am the author. And so we can see here in our Explorer window, we can see we're in our folder. We can add files, we can add subfolders. Right, for example, here is that folder on my hard drive. If I click here to add a subfolder, and we'll name it style. We'll throw a CSS file in there later on. You can see it automatically populate in there. We know they're all connected there. And so what I want to do here is I want to create a new file here. I want to create one called index.html. And our very first HTML file for a site that we make is always going to be an index.html. Index is kind of a code word in HTML for basically the root index file. If you go to any website that exists, right, you go to www.clevelandcc.edu, for example, that page that you land on is an index.html. And really every page that you land on is an index.html. The only way that you see that you aren't on an index.html is if you're on a page that has a file extension. So if you're on about.html, then that means you're not on an index.html. But if, for example, there is an about folder, inside of that about folder, you put an index.html, because that's going to be the automatic root of that folder. And so instead of going to whatever website / about.html, and it looks kind of, wonky and weird and messed up, you would just go to whateverwebsite.com / about. And it would automatically pull that index. So I'm going to go into my root folder, index.html here, and I'm going to start out by adding my HTML skeleton, my doc type, my HTML tags, my head tags, my body tags. And one of the great things about Visual Studio Code is that since it already knows that this is an HTML file, I can use a built-in sort of plugin. You don't have to install it, it's just already there, called Emmet, to expand out my code for me. And so I can just put an exclamation point, and you can see it pops up a little menu here, and it says exclamation point is an Emmet abbreviation. And so if I hit that exclamation point and then I hit enter, it automatically populates my my HTML skeleton for me, right? Doc type, HTML tags, head tags, body tags. We even get a couple meta tags here and a title tag, which we're just going to use the prompt for this module, which is the egg truck food truck. So we'll call this egg truck fine egg dish food truck, right? Just so we can have something in the title there. We can see if we switch over to our about here, I can do the same thing here, exclamation point. I might want the title to be a little bit different, so it's different in the top bar of the website. So maybe egg truck about. Here, right? So we have this index.html in our about, and this index.html in our root. Wrong key. I wanted to Control S to save. And just so we can have all of our files in place, I'm going to click on the style folder here, so where it expands the style folder. And we're going to add a style.css in here, because that's the next thing we're going to have to do. We're going to have to link our style sheet. So we're going to add a link rel equals style sheet. href equals style/style.css. And that will like my style sheet. If we want to make sure that we've linked our style sheet properly, one of the easiest ways to do that, we'll go ahead and save there, is to go into that style sheet and set a background color on the body. So we'll say, okay, body, background dash color, green, for example. Right, we'll change that, but we'll do that for the time being just to make sure. And so I have this go live button down here at the bottom of my browser. I can also right click and open with live server there. But that will open this index.html on a live page, which is here, right? So we see here, it's on localhost port 5500. And if I go to localhost port 5500 without the index.html after it, or whatever, We can see that it is a green background, so we know that our index.html, at least our root index file, is linked properly to the CSS file. Now, if we take this and copy it and paste it in our other CSS file, this href here is relative, right? This is a relative href, which means that's relative to where the index file, the index.html file itself, is stored. So it's going to look for a style folder inside of this about folder and look for a style.css in that. But we know that that doesn't exist. So if we were to save this here now before changing that, and we go to our website here, and we go to /about, we can see the page exists, right? If we look up here at the top of the page, we see egg truck about. But what we don't see is the green background because it's not properly linked to the style sheet. It's looking for that style sheet in a place that it doesn't exist. So if I add a // to the start of that href link, what that // is telling my website to do is to look up a level. So basically come out of the about folder, look up a level, which in this case is the root of the folder, and then look for style and style.css. So in this case, it comes out of about, it looks in the root, it sees style, and it's able to load the CSS file as it should. And if you get into deeper and deeper files, you can just add more dots. Right? // look up a level. And it gets you where you want to be. And so now if we look at our page, I think we might need to refresh here. I've saved. Could be I'm missing something. It's late in the day. One of those things. .. Yeah, .. 2 dots. Dot is one thing and 2 dots is something else. So .. is what we want here. .. tells it to go up a level. Sorry about that. Late in the day. Late in the day, too much stuff going on. So .. tells it to go up a level. That's 2 periods, period. Go up a level, look in the style folder, find the style.css. We're good to go. All right, so now we can see that background for the about page is green as well. Index is green and about is green because they both share the same style sheet. All right, so let's spend some time on our index. I can even close the about page for just a minute and start to write some of the code that I would normally write as I'm setting up just a simple basic page. When I do this, I normally will set up a header semantic tag section, a main semantic tag section, and a footer semantic tag section. And remember that these don't look like anything on our site, right? But if we look at our page source here, we'll see that they exist right there, header, main, and footer. And we can use them to kind of carve out the places where we want to put things. Right? And so as with the other items or HTML and CSS bootcamp assignments that you have in this course, this one also has a brief, which has a logo. And here is our egg truck logo. And so we can kind of use the colors out of this to start building ourselves, a bit of a site. right? So just for the sake of time, I'm gonna just kind of guess at colors because I'm pretty good at that anyway. You can use a tool that does color picking to get exact colors, or you can just kind of guess at colors. I'm going to do this site just slightly different, I think, than the other one that I did for the other class last Friday. So I think what I want to do here is, let's see, I think I want this background to be as close as I can get it to that yellow. And I might be able to get it pretty close here. So let's see here. Equal parts red and green make yellow. We're going to have to add in a lot of blue to get a lot of white in there as well. So let's try something like hashtag FFFFCC. That's pretty close. That might be a little too light. Let's split the difference. Yeah, we'll try that out. That's probably pretty close there. FFFFBB. Looks pretty close as I'm looking between both windows. So we'll save that, and now we'll see that our page itself is light yellow now. And if we look at these two here, looks like this one's looks like it's a little warmer. And it looks like it's a little lighter. I think, if I wanted to adjust this just a little bit, I could say like maybe F3 CC. So that would warm it up a little bit because that gives you a little more red. This will be the last little test I do here. But we'll see how that looks. Oh, that's real close. I think it should be a little, maybe even a little warmer still. But I think that's almost spot on. So we'll just let that be. One of the things that I might want to do here is I might want to take our header element selector and make that background color white, just to have it nice and bright white. By default, it is 100 pixel width, or it's 100% width rather. It's the width of the container or the viewport. So I can just give it a height or a min height here. We'll give it a min height of, let's say, 500 pixels, just to see it. That's probably a little big, but we'll kind of see how it goes. Right, it's kind of a popular thing to have. Just a moment. All right, sorry about that, everybody. I think we are back to where we need to be here. We'll trim that out of the upload. So let's see here. We're making a website. One of the things that you can notice here is that there's a little border around the head here. So one of the things that we would want to do here is we would want to look at the body here and make padding 0px and margin 0px. And that should get rid of that yellow background there. Now, one of the things that I like to do is if I have a white box that's going to be flowing into another white box, like our main content area here, I'll put like a little border or some sort of visual separator here on the bottom here. So in order to do that, we can add a border bottom to our header. We can make it something like 10 pixels, solid, and maybe we can make it a darker yellow or even an orange. So let's just take this color here that we used, add it here, and we can just use what we have here in Visual Studio. Just to change it quickly, I'll change it to hue, saturation, lightness mode, and I'll just lower the lightness to, like, say 60 to make it darker. And so that gives us a nice little bottom border there. We might even want to make that thicker for these purposes. Let's go 16. So then when we look at our main section here, we can make that a background color white. We can give it a width of, say, 960 pixels. We can give it a min height of, say, 800 pixels, right? And we can give it a, let's give it like a padding of 24 pixels, right? Everything else is good. So if we look at that now, we have that white box there in the middle. We need to center it up with our margin trick, right? Which is going to be margin 0 auto. And so that centers it up there nicely for us. So we have a content box here. Let's go ahead and do a footer, do our footer at the bottom while we're going here. So that's footer, background color. Let's make it that same background color that we have, that we used in our header there. We can give it a height of, let's say, 300 pixels. And let's make that a min height. Just so we can have kind of this whole site sort of laid out, right? You know, it's kind of a standard sort of layout here, you know, big header, body that's centered, some size of footer here. And so now we can start to do other stuff, like we could add the logo. And if you're comfortable using Cloudinary, like we did in Web 115, you can use Cloudinary here. Another thing you can do is you can just pull it directly into your project. So I might make an images folder and just drag from Windows Explorer the logo into the images folder. And so now it's in my project. Here, if I wanted to put it in the header, I could just do an img src equals images / eggtruck.png. Add the alt text equals egg truck, and self-close that tag. We'll give this an ID selector, ID equals logo. So then in our CSS here, we can focus hashtag logo. We can margin 0 auto to center it up. Now it is going to be, if we look at it now, it probably won't be centered, right? Because it's an image, and an image is an inline object by default. So if we wanted to center it up using the margin trick, we would have to change it to display block. Right, so far everything that we've talked about here is stuff that we also talked about, aside from using Visual Studio Code, stuff that we also talked about in Web 115 and in CTI 110, right? Like all this stuff shouldn't be new. Right, so now we have our logo nice and centered. If we want to add a little bit of margin to the top here, we can just add we can change that 0 to 12 pixels because that first number is top and bottom. And that'll add just a little bit of margin to the top. But it would actually be smarter in this instance to add a little bit more padding to our header element. Since margin on the top of that image is going to push everything down. What I would rather do here is add padding top to our header element. Let's say 24 pixels. And we need to add a semicolon here. Don't forget that. Good, so that gets us a little bit closer. I deleted the margin 0 auto out of there, so I'll bring that back. Margin 0 auto. Bingo. There it is, nice and centered. Got a little border around all of it. You can see it's pretty close. It's not quite the same, but it's pretty close. It's probably close enough. Let's do a quick little navigation menu here. Would probably be good. So also in the header, I am going to add an unordered list, which is the way we did this in Web 115. And I'll add 2 list items that'll be my links. The first one will be href equals. It'll be the home page, so it'll be index.html. And this will be home. But since I'm on the home page here, I'm going to make this a disabled link by adding the disabled keyword here, I think is what we do. So now if I look at it in my site, it should be there. Oh, it is. It's still clickable. See, that's what I get for having too many things going on. There is a is it role disabled? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe what I'm thinking about doesn't work with links. It just works with form fields. So what we could do here is just pull out the href for the home page. And then add one for our about page. About slash. All right, so now my homepage link doesn't link, but about does. So if I go here, it'll take me to the about page. We'll want to put that back so it actually works. We'd want to style that up to where it is not, or to where it would look better. All right, so one of the things that I like to do is I like to have everything on my site sans serif font. So I'll add my asterisk selector here at the top. Asterisk selector selects everything. And I'll add a font family to that. And we'll add a sans serif in here. And we'll add a box sizing here of border box. So I don't have to worry as much about box model here. So now I can focus that UL. Give it a width of 960 pixels, so it's the same width as our main here, and we can center it up. So margin 0 auto. Right, and so what that'll do is that'll create a little box here, put them in it. And then in the list style type is none. And I can't remember off the top of my head if we put that in the parent or the child, but I guess we're about to find out. Put that in the parent, right? So that takes off the disks. And what I want to do here is I want to display inline block. And so that should... Actually, I think I want to do that. Just display inline. Right? Or do I think I might want to do that on the child. Yeah. I want to do that on the child. I knew one of those things I needed to do on the child, which is the li tag. So if I take the li tag here, I display inline dash block. And that gets me what I want. I can also make the width of these a little bit wider, right? Width, I can say, maybe 200 pixels. And that'll make each list item a little bit wider. Now you can see here it's really close to the image. So one of the things that I might want to do is just kind of push it down a little bit so I can add some padding top here on the unordered list, maybe say 200 pixels. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, that pushes it down perfect. It's almost like I did math. All right, so now I have it home and an about. And I can take all this code that is in my body here of this HTML file, and I can copy it. And I can just paste it in the body of my index file here. Obviously, since it's in a different folder, I need a // there for the logo. I need to reference href equals .. on its own should work, and have the about page there. Right, and I'm going to send you all these files as well. So don't worry about that. But now if we look at our site, we see, okay, we've got our home page. We can click our About, goes to the About page. Click on Home, goes back to the home page. So another thing that we could do here is we could just add a H1. So I'll add an H1 here to main. This is on the About page, so I can add an H1 About Us with a paragraph of we're a food truck. So that way I can have an H1 on that page. And just to have some text here, we can put a similar thing on the home page. We're egg truck. We're a food truck. Okay. So now if we see our site, we have this information on the home page. We have this information on the About page. You can make H2s, H3s if you need them. All right, if we want to make these, if we want to make the headings a different color, for example, we can focus our H1 element selector, or we could put an ID or a class on them. And we just change the color. And we could even use, let's use this, but let's make it darker. So let's make it even darker still. Go for like a 30% there in lightness to make it even darker still. And we end up with something like that, right? And so for our purposes here, let's just add a little copyright statement in the footer. And we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I'll put it in a paragraph. And copy semicolon Mr. Ramsey 2023. Right, just to have a little copyright statement in there. We can add like a ID equals copy here. So we're specifically focusing on the copyright statement. And we can hashtag copy color white. And we can just copy and paste that on the second page as well. Like so, and I think that's basically everything you were asked to do, right? Like we need to line that up. So let's do that real quick. Right. For that, we can just text align center, and we can give a little bit of margin. Do I want to do margin top, or do I want to put a little padding top here? Padding top, 12 pixels. So it's like that. Simple website, clean design. Does everything that we need it to do. Uses only code that we talked about in Web 115. Just so we can kind of get back on track. Has a little navigation. Does a good job. So we'll wrap it up here. Next module is going to be about Git and GitHub. So I'm going to put this on GitHub for you all so I can share it for you easier. So I'm going to make a new GitHub. We're going to call this Egg Truck Demo. And I'm going to go into more detail about this in the future when we get to the next module about how all this works. So this is just a quick demonstration now, but we're going to create this repository. In Visual Studio Code, I can open up my terminal again. I can look and make sure that I am in the proper folder. I already have Git installed on my machine, so I can write the command git init. So I can put Git in it, right? What it really means is that we're initializing Git in this folder. That's what init is. So we're going to add all of these files to a staged workspace. So that's Git, add period, Git, commit, -m initial commit. This commits them to the work stage. What Git is a version manager, right? And it's commonly used, right? And one of the great things that we'll talk about it as we talk about the module next week is that everybody can work on their own copy and share their changes and do everything back and forth the way they need to do without interfering with anybody else's stuff. So when I stage a set of changes like this, they're for me, but then I can push them to a central Git repository, like on GitHub here, to where we can add our remote origin and just copy and paste that from the GitHub. And I can get push origin master. Master being my copy. And that will push it through the internet and push it to GitHub so that the code is there for you to review. So that makes it nice and neat and easy for you all to see. And this is how I'll share code with you all in this course and probably the other courses as well, especially if I'm just sharing code with you. One of the cool things about this that I can do as well is I can go into settings, and this is again something else we'll talk about next week. I can find pages. I can deploy from a branch. In this case, I'm going to deploy from the master branch because that's the main branch. And hit save. And that will actually create a server here that will host my HTML and CSS as a live site for free on GitHub. So we can actually see it as like a website, like we were doing here with our live server. So it takes a couple seconds here to kind of initialize and get going. But once it's ready to go, a link will pop up here. So I will share with you all this code, and I will share with you all the live page when it's ready to go here. And we'll kind of keep refreshing this page's space while I wrap up so I can show that to you all. That's all that I have for you for today. I think all that stuff kind of gets us into a good spot for at least you all being able to have the tools that you need to be able to execute this. We'll share this code with you. Oh, there's the live site. I can just click that and go to the EggTruck site, right? It looks exactly like the local one, except this one is on deramsey.github.io/eggtruckdemo. And I can go back and forth between my pages here. Pretty nice, pretty cool. So I'll share this link with you. I will share this link with you when I share the video with you, so you all can see this code. We'll try to edit out the middle there where I got an unexpected phone call as best as possible. But that's all that I have for you for today. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please send them to me via Teams or email. I don't think anybody is here with me currently, or else I'd ask for questions now. But with that being said, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.